What's up, guys? Y'all all right? Who's excited to be here tonight? Is anybody excited to be here? All right, now, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Anybody ever been to Atlanta before? A couple folks. And I know this is Texas, and they say everything in Texas is big. Am I right when they say that? And so that was like a 2 out of a 10 when I asked you that question. I need at least an 11 out of 10 when I ask you this question. I want to see what the energy is in the room. Who's excited to be here tonight? Wow, this is good. Turn to somebody next to you, grab them by the face, and scream, "I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited." Yeah. I want to do one thing to kick us off tonight that would make me feel a little bit more at home. Does anybody remember my wife, Tony? She was here. Yeah. Do we have any folks that are Sojo fans in the building? Anybody remember Sojo? Yeah, that's my homie. Obviously, that's my wife. I want y'all to do something with me to make them happy. It'll make me happy. I want every person in the room, without moving a lot, to get 10 high fives from 10 different people in 5 seconds. Go right now, go right now, go right now, go right now, go right now. Yeah, it's good, it's good. That's good, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Who did it? Who did it? Yeah, who did it? Who did it? I love it, I love it, I love it. Well, I'm excited about the topic this week. We know that the conference, the camp, whatever you want to call it, it's called Echo. We're talking about this idea of being an echo. Anybody ever heard an echo before? What does it sound like? Anybody? It's like, oh. Yeah, it's like something happens, and then it happens again, and then it continues to happen. Well, as we talk about this idea of echo, the question we're asking this week is, what are you echoing? Let me explain that. I know as a middle schooler or a high schooler, you're like, echo, what are you talking about? I'm just going to school. What am I echoing? Well, we believe that you're echoing something, but specifically, we believe you're either echoing what God has ordained for you to echo, what God has created you to echo, or you're echoing what the world wants you to echo. And so the question we want to wrestle with tonight and for the rest of the week is, what are you echoing? And we want you, we hope, maybe you're a believer, maybe you are a Christian, but maybe you're in here with a friend and you're going, they dragged me in here, they told me girls are going to be here, so I showed up. Right? Or maybe you're like, well, they said this is where the guys are going to be at. Jesus, I don't know what God, what? Well, regardless of where you came from, here's what we're hoping. We're hoping that over the next couple of days, you'll want to echo what God wants you to echo more than anything else. And so tonight, I want to focus on this specific form of echoing. We're going to talk about a couple different ones over the next couple of nights, but I want to talk about this one tonight. Put it on the screen. Let them see it. I want to talk about echoing God's design. Anybody ever asked the question, what's my purpose? Anybody ever had that question or had that thought? Yeah, that's one of the greatest questions that people ask in the world today. What's my purpose? Why have I been created? Many of you've been at church for a while. Some of you, again, you may just came in for the girls or the guys. But if you've ever been at church a long time or even once, you've heard people say that you were created for a reason. That you weren't created on accident. No, you were created on purpose. Don't miss this. For a purpose. On purpose. For a purpose. But what's the purpose? If I've been created for a purpose, and I've been created on purpose for that purpose, then what is the purpose? It's the greatest question that people ask, especially as it pertains to God. Well, I want to tell you tonight what that purpose is. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, it's not a secret. You might as well know it at this young age. I want to tell you why God created you tonight. But in order to do that, I want to illustrate one principle that will help you understand it on a greater level. I mean, this principle changed my life when I really understood it. Put the principle up on the screen. It's that next slide. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. I'm going to say it again. It was so good. I'm excited. God uses ordinary people, to do extraordinary things. Any superhero fans in the building? Any Superman fans? Superman? Okay, Wonder Woman fans. Any Wonder? You know I have to ask this next one. Any Black Panther fans in the bit? Yeah, I had to ask it because I'm black. It is what it is. Wakanda forever. Any Marvel fans? Any DC fans? All right, here's the question. Marvel or DC? Marvel or DC? Who says Marvel? Raise your hand. Who says DC? Raise your hand. Wow. Listen. Don't judge me on this. This is between me and you and whoever you text about it. My favorite superhero of all time, as opposed to Black Panther, we're going to put him over there because he gets in by default. Don't judge me on this. You said you wouldn't. Here it is. Batman. I know you're like, what? Listen. Let me tell you why Batman is my favorite superhero besides Black Panther. Batman really doesn't have any powers. Can we be honest? He can't really fly. He can't shoot lasers out of his eyes. Batman is just rich, right? He's got a lot of money, and he's got some fancy kung fu moves, and he figures out how to do some crazy things. But let me tell you why I really love Batman. Come on, listen to this. Well, I love Batman because I feel like I could be Batman. I feel like I could be, it's attainable. Do y'all think I could be Batman? And here's the great news. You could be Batman too, but let me tell you why. Because Batman is ordinary. But he's figures out how to do extraordinary things. He's a great example of this. Now, I don't want to talk about Batman tonight, but what I do want to talk about is how God uses that concept of taking ordinary people and doing extraordinary things. I want to talk to you about how he does that and how he uses that to accomplish his purposes in the earth. I want to tell you why that's connected to your purpose. In order to do that, I want to talk to you about 3 men tonight. The first man is a good friend of mine. Now, don't laugh at his name. This is his name, Donk. You said you wouldn't laugh. His name is Donk, D-O-N-K. Can you say Donk with me? Say it, Donk. Wow, you did it. I didn't think you would do it. You did it. The second man I want to talk to you about tonight is Moses. Anybody ever heard of Moses in the Bible? Anybody? Yeah. Hands down. And the third person I want to talk to you about tonight is you. And here's what I believe. I know I'm going to talk about you. I got to. That's why we're here. As we hear these 3 stories and we notice the similarities in the stories, we'll discover this principle of how God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We'll discover how incredible it is and how it really works and how it's related to us. This is going to be a big night. I'm excited about it. Donk grew up in a place called Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Anybody ever heard of Louisiana? Been to Louisiana? Maybe you've been to New Orleans, right? There's another place in Louisiana called Baton Rouge. Now, if Donk were to walk in here right now, he would say, I'm from the slums. The slums. So not just Baton Rouge, but from the slums. And the worst part of Baton Rouge. But before I talk to you about Donk's childhood, at one time, Donk was one of the biggest rappers in the game. He has a cousin, and his cousin's name is Lil Bootsy. I don't know if you heard of Lil Bootsy before, but Lil Bootsy had a song called Wipe Me Down. And it actually went like this: wipe me down. That's how the song went. Anybody ever heard that song before? Say it with me. You'll hear it. Go. Wipe me down. Wow, you did it. It's like a dance. It's like wipe me down. Wipe Me Down was like #1 on the charts, and Donk was with them. But his life didn't start in hip hop. His life started in the slums of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I want to take you into that. By age 8, and nobody in here is 8. Everybody's older than 8. But by age 8, Donk was carrying guns on them at all times. I know, it's a crazy story, but it's a true story. This is how dangerous the slums were where he grew up. Because Donk realized something at an early age. If he was going to survive, not lose his life, he said it's two things. Either he was going to have to conquer, or he would be conquered. He was going to have to conquer, or he'd be conquered. He knew this at age 8. And so he started carrying around firearms. And fast forward the story, by age 14, and I know many of you in here are 14. By age 14, Donk had joined gangs, and he was selling drugs and still carrying around firearms. Donk is just a teenager, but he's living in a war zone. One day, age 15, something happens and a drug deal goes bad. The police rush in and they see him and his friends, and everybody starts shooting. And some folks lose their life. The police didn't lose their life, but some other folks lost their life. And Donk didn't shoot anybody, but his friends did. And so the police grabbed all of them and took them downtown. And because, I told you, Donk was in the worst part of the, Baton Rouge, didn't have any money, was poor, was this, young. They charged all of them with a life sentence plus 90 years. And they sent Donk and his friends off to the worst prison in the country. I want you to imagine this. He's age 14. Let me tell you why I want to tell you this story, because either you're right over 14 in this room or you're close to it. Donk was your age, and he's in prison. Well, 2 years into it, Donk notices the same thing. He goes, you know what? If I'm going to survive in here, and Angola is where they send people to die. This is people, they're not getting out of prison. This is it. This is the end of the line for them. 2 years into it, Donk notices the same thing. Either I'm going to have to conquer or I'm going to be conquered. And Donk starts fighting and he starts going crazy. Well, 2 years into it, something crazy happens. Donk just loses his mind. And don't miss it. He says, I'm going to take my own life. And he's about to kill himself. And his friend notices him in the cell, runs in, busts in. Donk, what are you doing? He said, well, my life is over. I'm not going. It's over. What else do I have to live for? He said, Donk, hold up. He said, I've been watching you for 2 years. And you've been losing your mind. He said, man, if you're ever going to make it in here, don't miss it, or make it out of here, you're going to have to learn how to pray. He said, pray. His friend got up and walked out. So here Donk is. He's just had a crazy moment. He's thought about maybe taking his life, and he sits down. And he said, well, what else do I have to lose? And so Donk starts praying. And what his prayers started looking like, because he was so young and he had never prayed before, it sounded something like this. God, if you can get me out of here, get me out of here. Right? Donk continued to pray, and his prayers graduated from God, can you get me out of here, to God, can you be in here with me? God, I know you're real, and I just need your help. Listen, 5 years goes by, nothing happens. But Donk keeps praying. He's praying, and he's doing that, and he gets closer to God. His prayers start changing. Now Donk is a grown man, and one day his lawyer comes. So now this is about 7 years. His lawyer comes one day because he got a lawyer, and he says, Donk, I got good news. He said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I was able to talk to the judge, and they say if you plead guilty, they'll reduce your sentence from a life sentence plus 90 years down to 7 years and 6 months, and you've already done 7 years. So you'll be out of here in 6 months. He said, what? He said, come on, let's do it. So they go and do the trial, and Donk's mom is on the front row, because she knows he didn't do, but he didn't tell her about the deal, and so he's pleading guilty. She's going crazy. Baby, what are you talking about? No. She's like, Mom, calm down. We got something going on. He pleads guilty. Listen, Donk is out of prison in 6 months. It's a miracle. Now, if you were Donk, wouldn't you just serve God like crazy after that? Right? You're like, my life is over. I'm never getting out of prison. I start praying, and 7 years later, like, God delivers me, and it's crazy. If I was Donk in that moment, I'd be at Echo all the time. I'd just be here. I'd show up at doxology, and I'd be running around the halls. But that's not what Donk did, because you forgot his cousin was Lil Bootsy. You remember? And Wipe Me Down was out. And it was all over the radio. And so his cousin says, Donk, come on, let's go on the road. And so Donk starts traveling around the world. He becomes this big rapper, and he goes right back to selling drugs. He goes right back to what God brought him from. One day Donk has a moment. It's 5 a.m. And God wakes him up on tour. And he says to him, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, I didn't rescue you so you could go back to what I rescued you from. Don't miss this. Here's the part. He said, I rescued you so that you could go and rescue others. I didn't rescue you so you could go back. I rescued you so that you could go and rescue others. Don't bust out crying. He's like, you're right. And God says to him, I want you to do something. I want you to stop rapping, and I want you to start a prayer line. He said, a prayer line? I'm a rapper. I'm not starting a prayer line. That's whack. He said, I want you to start a prayer line. Long story short, Donk starts a prayer line, and 30,000 people join the prayer line. And 20% of the people that join, 20,000 of the 30,000 give their life to Christ. I want to show you what Donk looks like now. Do we have the prayer picture? Can you put the prayer picture up on the screen? Look at Donk. He got his hair cut. I want you to look at what he looked like before. Put the pictures up there before. I want them to see what he looked like before. Do we have it? That's what he looked like. And he don't look like that anymore. He looks like this. Go back to the other picture. Like that. It's unbelievable. And guess what? almost 20% of the people that gave their life to Christ were back in the prison that Donk was in. Listen at me. God did something extraordinary through somebody ordinary. Donk is changing the world. His life started with violence and guns and people losing their lives. And it ends, and even now, with him saving people. The very people that he was going against, he's now saving. I want you to notice three things about Donk's story. Put those three things up on the screen. It's the next slide. That Donk came from the slums. Donk further was raised up and started enslaving the slums. What does that mean? That means that he started creating more darkness in the darkness he was already in. He started selling drugs. He started fighting people. He started doing crazy things. He further enslaved the place he was in, the slum. And then Donk was sent back to save the slums. Don't miss it. He came from the slums. He enslaved the slums. He was sent back to save the slums. You know whose story that is? Don't miss this. Come on, all eyes up here. You know whose story that is? That's Moses' story. You're like, Moses? That's Moses' story. You know the story of Moses, don't you? Let me tell you, if you didn't know, Moses was born into a slum. The story goes like this, is that Pharaoh decided that he was going to enslave all of the children of Israel in Egypt. And so Moses was born into slavery. One day Pharaoh decides, you know what, I'm going to kill all of the firstborn boys, because some people believe, theologians believe, that he discovered that one day there'd be a boy that grew up and would overthrow him. And so he starts killing all of the firstborn boys, all the boys. And Moses' mother hears about it, and she wants to protect her baby. So she gets Moses and puts him in a basket and sends him up the river in hopes that everything would work out. And Pharaoh's wife sees it, and Pharaoh's family sees him, and they grab him, and they raise Moses in the house of the king in that time. And Moses starts enslaving even more his own people, because he doesn't know. They raise Moses up and they put him over his very family, and he starts ruling. Well, one day he figures it out. Wait, this is my family. And he goes out to see the slaves. And one of the Egyptians is about to kill one of his own. And it says that Moses kills this man by accident. And it's crazy. Well, Moses runs away. He goes to a faraway place, and he changes his life. He's having like this breakdown. It's getting wild and it's getting crazy. And he meets his wife and kind of meets God and his father-in-law. And then one day, God says something to Moses. I don't want you to miss it. Put that scripture up on the screen for me. Do we have it? It says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. Come on, this is the Bible. This is crazy. I want you to see this. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed, don't miss this. Here it is. It's getting real. It's getting real. Mayday, mayday. Then The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned. God says, I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites. Good Lord, that's a lot of names. Let's keep going. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. Everybody say, go with me. Go. Say it like you mean it. Just go. Go. He says, so now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Well, you know the story. You know what happens next. Moses saves the people. Moses was born into a slum. Moses was raised up and further enslaved the very slum he came from. Moses was sent back to save the slum. And he did. All eyes up here. Here's the part that you can't miss. That's Donk's story. That's Moses' story. But hear this. That's your story. I'm going to come down. That's your story. Maybe you don't realize it's your story, but it is your story. For all of us have been born into a form of the slum. You're like, what is that? That's this dark world that we live in. Come on, can we be honest? We know that the world we live in is dark. We know that bad things happen. We know that the world that we live in right now is not the world that God created it to be. How do you know it's dark? Well, because you get sad sometimes. Well, because you get depressed sometimes. Well, because you see people die sometimes, and people do things and they may say things that you know they're not supposed to say. And even though you're 11 and 12 and 13 and 15 and 17, you know that it's not right. This is a slum that we live in spiritually, and we were all born into it. You know what else is true is that all of us, if we've ever sinned before, what does that mean? If we've ever done something that God didn't want us to do, if we've ever lied, if we've ever cheated, if we've ever said some things that we weren't supposed to say, if we've ever done some things that we weren't supposed to do, maybe there's some things that you've done, even as a young, that nobody knows about. If you've ever done anything that God would not want you to do, you further enslave the slum that we live in. Because maybe you've hurt somebody's feelings. High school students, maybe you've watched some things you weren't supposed to watch. You've said some things you weren't supposed to say behind somebody's back. I know it's night one, but I've got to address this so that the rest of the nights make sense. And if you're in this room, maybe not everybody in this room has given their life to Christ, but I think most of us have given our lives to Christ. And you know what happens, right? One day God comes to us in the midst of us doing some things that we know we're not supposed to be doing, following a way that we know we're not supposed to be following. And God, you know what he does? He does what he did for Donk. He rescues us. He rescued us. He says, my son died for you. Your sins are forgiven. God says, I love you. I'm for you. You matter. You are significant. You don't have to live and just stay and be a victim to the darkness of this world. You can become a light and you can change things. And God saves us He forgives us. He sets us free. And you know what we're supposed to do next? We're supposed to do what Moses did. We're supposed to do what Donk eventually did. We're supposed to go back and rescue those that have not been saved. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to, let me bring it down a little bit lower to you. We're supposed to go and find our friends that go to school with us, that are in our classroom, that are playing with us, that we hang out with, that we know don't know Jesus, that we know are struggling, that we know are depressed, that we know are lonely, that we know, can I just say this? I know it's not one, but I gotta say it. I'm so sorry we just met each other. But we know in this generation that there are more teenagers and even some middle school students that are going, maybe I should take my life. And we're supposed to find those people and we're supposed to bring them to the freedom that we found. We're supposed to bring them to the rescuer. We're supposed to go back to save the slums. But many of us don't. For whatever reason, some of us don't. We get too distracted. We're too afraid. We're this, that, and the third. We don't want to stand out. We don't want to look different. It's inconvenient. No, I got other stuff to do. I know she's going through that. And I don't want to, it's uncomfortable for me. But I want to tell you this. If you've not done it, that's your purpose. We talk about echoing God's design. If we are to truly echo God's design, we have to echo the concept that God has created us. He saved us so that we could go and save others. God didn't rescue us so that we could just coast or so that we could go back to the life that he rescued us from. God rescued us. He created us, to go and rescue others. That's your purpose. And that's God's design for you. I want you to do this without making any noise, without messing with anyone next to you. Would you just close your eyes? And as your eyes are closed, come on, just be serious for a second. As your eyes are closed, I want you to imagine what a world would be if everyone your age decided that they would go and rescue their friends. And they would go and rescue some of their family members. You don't have to be an adult to do something extraordinary. God can use you right now in middle school and in high school to do extraordinary things. All eyes open, look at me. Here's the last thing I want you to remember, and I'm back tomorrow night. That God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. That's his purpose. That's our purpose. He wants to use us to do something extraordinary. If you'll do it, the world will change. God, we love you right now. We thank you. We thank you for this message, and we thank you for this reminder on night one that you've created us, you've rescued us so that we could go and rescue others. We know we're young, but Jesus was 12 and he knew what he was supposed to be doing. And he did it. Let us know that right now, you want to use us to change our schools, to be an inspiration to our families, but most importantly, to save and rescue those the same way we've been rescued. God, I pray for those that may be in the room that may not have been rescued yet. They say, well, I haven't given my life to Christ. God, I pray that over these next couple of days and even tonight, you would let them know that you want to rescue them. And that you created them to go back and rescue others, that you will do extraordinary things to them. And you want to. In Jesus' name, amen.